Hey everyone, welcome to our discussion on the original student response, our OSR. So the OSR is one of our assessments for objectives. It's done either through written or visual arts. This is our only option for visual arts responses to the objectives. The prompt for the OSR is the exact wording of the objective. And most of the time, it's going to be the last objective of the unit because it's kind of cumulative. It goes all the way back to the beginning. OSR responses are going to measure your historical knowledge, your historical skills, but we also want you to be creative in the way that you think about and express about history. Just like all the other objectives, OSRs are 10 points and they're scored using a rubric. And what you will produce is a unique and original student creation in response to an objective. OSRs are open-ended questions, which means they have open-ended responses. So there are very few guidelines we're going to give you for OSRs, except that you have to produce some work that you create from scratch that uniquely is your idea that reflects what the objective is asking about. So if we take a look for Unit 1, our learning objective is explain the effects of the development of transatlantic voyages from 1491 to 1607. So what was the impact of these transatlantic voyages that occurred from Europe to Africa and the New World? So that's your prompt. It's pretty broad as to what you can do. And then what you will do is you'll craft a response to that. Now let's talk about time. I really want to stress OSRs don't weigh any more than the other objectives, the multiple choice clusters, FRQs, DBQs, SAQs. They're all 10 points. So this is not a project, so to speak, that you're going to spend days or weeks or even an entire semester on. We recommend that you spend about 30 minutes crafting your OSR, and it shouldn't be much more than that. So with that in mind, that this is about a 30-minute activity, let's take a look at some possible examples. Now, these are ideas for possible written responses to an OSR. This is a list I generated off the top of my head. This is by no means exhaustive. You are not limited to this. You can go off in any direction in anything you want to do. This is really meant to start your brain thinking as to how I might want to respond to the OSR. This is for responses that are done in writing. So most of these things will be done in Google Docs. You could write a real short 2 to 3 paragraph cause and effect essay on the effects of those transatlantic voyages way back in the 1400s to something today. How do those two things correlate in a cause and effect essay? So let's relate old history to what's going on contemporaneously in our society. Maybe you'll do a 2 or 3 paragraph narrative essay where you describe the effects on the modern world of the transatlantic trade back then. If you're more creative in your outlook, you could do a poem about the effects of the transatlantic voyages for people of color. Zero in on that particular group. If you've read a book about one of the effects of the transatlantic trade, or you find an article or an online piece, or an excerpt from a book, maybe just a chapter or a passage that you want to respond to. It could be fiction, nonfiction. It's up to you. But write a review of that piece. How does it look as far as historical accuracy? And then respond to that piece. What do you think about it? And this allows us to look at works that are written about the effects of the transatlantic trade and critically respond to those. Maybe you're more of a left brain person, so you want to create a table that on one side are the effects of the transatlantic voyages. On the right side is some contemporary things that has resulted from those. And make sure you're clearly explaining how do the causes and effects relate in this table. Or if you want to think about someone who was alive at that time period, whether it was somebody from Europe or Africa or the Americas, maybe write 2 to 3 diary entries or journal entries about what that person is thinking and feeling in that time period that are based on historical evidence. You know what happened in the New World and in Africa and the Old World, so maybe you're going to write about a serf in Europe or a Native American in Mexico or an African along the west coast of Africa. And how did the transatlantic trade affect that individual? The question is about effects, and you can do multiple effects, or I'll allow you to zero in on one particular effect if you would like. So these are all possible things you can think about, but again, are by no means limited to for written OSR. If you're more of a visual arts person, writing isn't your thing, here are some things that you could do. Instead of a table, maybe you make a chart or graph showing the effects of a transatlantic voyage. Do so visually, a visual representation of how did that voyage impact New World, Old World, Africa, whatever you want to look at. Maybe you'll clip images out and create a collage that shows the effects of the transatlantic voyages. If you do that, you do need a brief written explanation of what your images are. Not necessarily every image, but explain your theme and your idea about your art piece. Do an illustration in any medium, if it's painting or sketching, about the effects of the transatlantic voyages. Now, again, with that 30-minute guideline that we're throwing out there, we realize you're not going to be able to get like a complete oil painting done, nor do we necessarily want you to turn in a complete oil painting every unit, or watercolors or whatever your medium may be. But you could include like your sketchbook of what the piece would look like when it was finished, label colors and imagery and ideas with a brief written explanation to help interpret your sketch that you would take to fruition if you decided to go in some sort of like painting medium. You could also do a web-based response, maybe a YouTube video. Try to keep videos under a minute in length because we have a lot of them that we're going to watch, or creation of a website using Google Sites or something. Anything that's electronic based. It doesn't have to be paints and acrylics and oils and tactile media. It could be electronic media as well, if that's more of your forte. If you like to draw, or you like comics or graphic novels, do a 6 or 9 panel illustration showing the effects of the transatlantic trade at that time, and do it in graphic novel format where you have, captions and thought bubbles and speech bubbles and things in it. Or if you like music, create a playlist and clip some lyrics from 4 or 5 songs from today that you feel relate to the effects of the transatlantic trade, and then do an annotation with those. So that means create a document, embed your clip there of your music, like 15, 20, 30 seconds, however long that lyrical snip is, and then just do a little annotation explaining why you chose that and how it relates to transatlantic trade. So that's it. These are just suggestions. We'll share the rubric with you in the next video that gives you your general guidelines, but this is very broad. Your creativity is up to you, how you want to approach it, whether it's writing or visually. But again, keep in mind, I'm stressing this again, this is about 30 minutes time that it should take. So don't spend hours and hours and hours on this project neglecting your other APUSH work and your other classes because you're really excited about this. Make sure you find a balance when you're doing your OSR, because it does not weigh any more than your multiple choice clusters, your free response, your DBQ, and your SAQs. So keep that in mind. But on the whole, we're looking forward to your creativity and seeing what you do with this without a lot of guidance from us. All the other assessment tools are very structured. This is a very unstructured tool where it's really going to fall to you. When you ask your teacher what you should do, we're going to ask you about your interest and your ideas, but we're not going to say do this and do that. That's up to you to determine. As always, if you have questions, email or ask your teacher about the OSR, and have a great day.